She was always there before the lights came on. The old Librarian base had seen better years. Faded carpet, sun-bleached encyclopedias no one opened anymore, and overhead lights that buzzed like they were keeping secrets. And yet, every morning at exactly 6:45, long before the MPs made their rounds or the junior officers stumbled in with last-minute report requests, she would unlock the front door, slip through with a worn canvas tote slung over one shoulder, and disappear among the stacks. Her name was Eleanor Rhodes. Just Miss Rhodes to most. Hair pulled into a tight twist. Glasses on a fine chain. Cardigans that smelled faintly of lemon polish and dust. She catalogued faster than the database could keep up, shelved with geometric precision, and knew the exact floor creak pattern that would lead her to a misfiled document like a bloodhound on the scent. To anyone watching, she was the perfect base librarian, invisible, gentle, forgettable. But General Sandoval wasn't just anyone. He'd been transferred to the administrative command post less than a week ago and had spent most of that time trying to make sense of the personnel archive, a mess of digital holes and analog ghosts. Somewhere between Box 47 and the misnumbered set of Gulf War transfer papers, he noticed a file that shouldn't have existed. It was misfiled under Facilities, Plumbing Work Orders. Yet the folder's seal bore a symbol few on base would recognize, a falcon perched on a lightning bolt. He looked around. No cameras. No assistants. No noise. When he opened it, the contents didn't just raise his eyebrows, they erased his blood pressure. There was a dossier, yellowed with age but stamped with the markings of the now-defunct Recon Group 17X. Attached was a personnel record. The photo, a younger Eleanor Rhodes. Hair tied back. No glasses. A different posture, upright, jaw tight, shoulders braced for recoil. And beside her name, the phrase, Deep Recon, Tier 3 Embedded Asset. Status, silent. He reread it twice. Silent. The designation wasn't symbolic. It was literal, an operational class so buried in post-mission layers, the asset's identity was often disguised with legitimate civilian roles. Roles like base librarian. He closed the file slowly. Then he stood up. That day, Eleanor's routine didn't change. She served tea in paper cups to a pair of civilian contractors in the research section. She found a dog-eared copy of Counterinsurgency in Theory for a corporal who probably wouldn't read it. She reshelved a full cart before 10 a.m. But when General Sandoval entered the main aisle, she looked up, briefly. No panic. No recognition. But there was something. Not fear. Not pride. It was something like permission. Miss Rhodes, he said, keeping his voice low, calm. I think we need to talk. She tilted her head, the way one might acknowledge a passing bird, then motioned toward the reading room. He followed, boots silent on the carpet. No cameras there either. He placed the file on the table between them. I'm not here to disrupt your assignment, he said. But I need to understand what this means. She didn't answer with words. She reached into her tote bag and pulled out a single laminated sheet. She laid it over the file like a final page in a classified manual. On it was a map. A compound. Coordinates. Handwritten corrections. And a notation at the bottom. Last viable contact. Northern Corridor breach expected 9.1. Surveillance recommended. It wasn't old. It wasn't historic. It was dated 3 weeks ago. Sandoval sat back slowly. Are you still active? She blinked. Once. Are we compromised? She blinked again. Twice. He exhaled. And your cover here? Now she finally spoke, her voice soft, measured, almost soothing. They still believe I'm retired. That's the only reason they trust the courier drop inside the philosophy section. Book titled Silent Authority. Page 113. It was the most words she'd said to anyone in years. Sandoval felt a chill creep up his spine. Not fear. Not distrust. It was all. She stood, packed the file, and began walking toward the back hallway. We'll need eyes on the perimeter before next Monday. "There's a contractor, name's Halvorsen. He's not who he claims to be." He followed, but she turned once. No smile, no salute, just a whisper of steel in her voice. "You can call me Eleanor. Or you can call me what they used to." "What's that?" he asked. She looked at him fully now. "Courier 3. Tear silent. On most bases, intelligence isn't passed in sealed envelopes or hushed briefings. It's passed through routine. A file misfiled, a power outage at the exact right moment, a coffee order that arrives a minute too early. And Miss Rhodes, Courier 3, had been passing information like that for 26 years. After that morning, General Sandoval did what smart commanders do when they stumble onto a classified volcano buried under their feet. He didn't touch anything without gloves, and he didn't speak of what he knew aloud. Instead, he watched. Silently. Closely. The philosophy section where the drop was located, 3rd row, 2nd shelf, behind silent authority, turned out to be the quietest place on base. Which made sense. Everyone thought they knew who Miss Rhodes was, just the elderly librarian with a scary good memory and an obsession with the Dewey Decimal System. They didn't see her stop just long enough at the mop closet on Mondays. Or that she always left 2 paperbacks on the windowsill every Thursday, both with coded spine numbers that didn't exist in the library's actual catalog. The story the file had hinted at, the Tier 3 embedded asset, was slowly unraveling into something much deeper. Miss Rhodes had served during the back half of the Cold War, under a program so compartmentalized that only a few personnel even knew her by name. She'd been inserted as a civilian admin in 5 different theaters. Southeast Asia, Eastern Europe, North Africa, each time operating under cover of bureaucracy, logistics, or clerical support. But the truth? She was the one sent in when a unit had no intel but needed extraction within 48 hours. She didn't command squads. She didn't carry heavy weapons. She carried knowledge. The kind that doesn't come from reading reports, but from reading people. It was rumored she once sat beside a warlord for 11 days, disguised as a translator, gathering every movement pattern of the compound while never saying more than 20 words. The extraction team said she left behind blueprints drawn on hotel napkins with instructions so precise, they didn't fire a single shot. That kind of operative doesn't retire. They fade. Back at the base, word began to spread, not about her identity, but about her sudden involvement. A minor civilian contractor vanished after a routine background check flagged an alias, something about a mismatch in foreign travel stamps. Security rotations near the motor pools shifted subtly. One communications relay request got mysteriously rerouted through a dead satellite. And Eleanor Rhodes? Still quiet. Still shelving. Still drinking her tea from the same pale blue mug. Until the night the lights flickered. Power loss on a base happens. Happens more than you'd think. But it doesn't happen during a war games simulation with 3 outside NATO observers and encrypted data running through every wire in a 10-mile radius. At exactly 2:17 a.m., the lights went out. Emergency backups kicked in 0.7 seconds later. That's standard. What wasn't standard was the total wipe of all data logs for the preceding 12 hours, and a broadcast ping from a long-dormant relay tower marked decommissioned. Miss Rhodes was already on site. She'd shown up 15 minutes before the failure, delivering a box of books for the commanding officer's reading shelf. When the backup systems came online, she was standing in the server room hallway with a flashlight and a post-it note in her hand. She handed it to the officer on duty and left. The note read, "Node breach mirrored. Do not reconnect. Replacement route 192.44.193.5. Tell Sandoval he's already late." She left through the side exit, passing 3 technicians and a lieutenant colonel who would later argue over whether she was ever really there. By morning, the breach was confirmed. By noon, a civilian contractor named Halvorsen was missing. And by dusk, General Sandoval had a sealed envelope on his desk with 2 words on the outside. Page 113. He flipped to it. Inside was a map, this time newer. Red markers. Hand-sketched coordinates. Notations in what looked like shorthand, not military, but hers. There was no signature. But it was clear. The librarian wasn't coming back to work for a few days. Because whatever mission Courier 3 had been recalled for, it wasn't over yet. She hadn't disappeared. She'd simply resumed her post. 3 days passed with no sign of Miss Rhodes. The library remained dark. A handwritten note hung on the front door. System maintenance in progress. Return soon. Most people didn't think twice. Just a minor glitch in the archives. Maybe the old librarian had finally taken leave. But General Sandoval knew better. She was never gone. She was somewhere doing what she'd always done, gathering threads, untangling lies, feeding the machine just enough truth to keep the right wheels turning. That third morning, the commander received a package. Plain brown envelope. No return address. Inside, a flash drive, a redacted personnel file, and a single photo. The photo wasn't old. Taken just 2 nights prior, grainy and high-angled. It showed 2 men standing in front of an unmarked van near the edge of the base's restricted perimeter. One was the contractor, Halvorsen, the man whose record she'd flagged days before. The other? Unknown. No visible ID, no facial match in the system. But what caught Sandoval's eye wasn't the men. It was what lay on the gravel beside them. A small, glinting rectangle, barely visible in the light. A nameplate. From the library? She had been there. She had been watching. The drive's contents detailed a full breach protocol, identities, false credentials, satellite routing paths, and 3 distinct exits that had since been quietly closed. By the time the intelligence unit confirmed the data, 2 more, civilian contractors, had been escorted off base for administrative inconsistencies. There was no debrief. No medal. No official file. But the breach was over. And the next morning, the lights in the library were back on. She was there, of course. Shelving books as if she'd never left. Glasses on. Tea steaming gently beside a returned volume of Sun Tzu, the annotated edition. When Sandoval walked in, she didn't greet him. Just nodded once, barely perceptible, and kept working. He approached the desk and placed the photo on the counter between them. "Was this you?" he asked quietly. She didn't look up. "I don't work in the past, General," she said. "Only in prevention." He leaned closer. "Why still here? Why keep at this?" She slid a book toward him. The Quiet War by R.J. Hanley. A fiction novel. Inside, a bookmark protruded, page 47. He opened it. Folded between the pages was a note. It read, "There are stories that must be buried, and others we simply check out to the right reader." He looked up, but she was already gone, rounding a corner with a cart of books. She didn't return to the front desk until closing time, when the last officer had signed out, and the last light outside faded to dusk. Then, as the wind rattled the windows, she pulled a file from beneath the counter, an original, handwritten logbook. Names. Locations. Years. A running tally of missions that didn't exist. She added one more line. Halvorsen Protocol, neutralized. Access rerouted. And then, she wrote a single phrase at the bottom of the page, underlined once. Courier 3, operational. She didn't look up when the door clicked shut behind General Sandoval. Because she knew what was coming next. The next breach. The next file. The next ghost in a uniform who didn't belong. But the library would remain. And she would be there, watching. Waiting. Ready. Because some assignments don't end. They're just reclassified. The wind softens. Outside the library, the base is quiet again. No alarms, no encrypted chatter, no shadows slipping through the wire. Just the steady hum of fluorescent lights overhead, and the low creak of old pages settling into place. Eleanor sits alone now, a pen resting lightly between her fingers. She's not cataloging, not decoding, not alert. She's simply still, her back straight, her breath slow, her eyes unfixed as if staring at a memory she hasn't decided whether to keep. Around her, nothing screams history. There are no plaques, no framed medals, no folded flags. Just shelves of stories. Some fiction, some classified. In this moment, there's nothing extraordinary about her. No hint of the classified years or the lives quietly rerouted by a word, a glance, a file misfiled just right. She is, at last, at ease. The quiet is deliberate now. Heavy, but not cold. More like the silence of a room where someone is thinking deeply, where the next decision is still forming. Outside, a security vehicle rolls by. A dog barks. Somewhere in the barracks, a young recruit laughs at a joke only the exhausted find funny. Eleanor closes the logbook. No rush. No finality. Just one more entry done. Because in the end, not all heroes carry rifles. Not all uniforms are stitched with rank. Some serve by watching. By remembering. By ensuring others don't have to. Her war was never about glory. It was about prevention. And in that soft, invisible space between what could have happened and what never will, she was always there. Some heroes walk the battlefield. Others guard the quiet between battles. And when the next shadow moves, when the next breach whispers its way in, she'll be ready, not with orders, but with understanding. Her strength isn't loud. It's precise. Measured. Unbreakable. And still, so very silent.